this last lecture, we will discuss about Australia continents, the ecosystem. And this is actually our lecture name, right? This is our course name is Living Landscape, Australia Rainforest, Reef, and Desert. Okay, so in this course, of course, mostly we will talk about the ecosystem. Last time, Zach asked about whether we are going to focus in certain organism or not. So basically, okay, we will focus on ecosystem. And when we study ecosystem, of course, we will also study organisms within that specific ecosystem. Okay, so now, yeah, this is up to you. This is actually kind of challenge for you. Okay, if you want to focus in one type of organism on that specific ecosystem that we will study in Australia, that's going to be good also, because you know, you're going to focus in one type of organism. You will focus their features, their structure, their adaptations to that specific ecosystem. And at the end, you might be able to use it for your final writing. Okay? After you going back from Australia, then you can actually write that specific organism that you choose as your focus during your study in Australia. Okay, but in general, for everybody, all of you will study the ecosystem. Okay, so we will study ecosystem, and we will study the organism with specific adaptation in that specific ecosystem, because we're going to learn several ecosystem in Australia. Over here is mentioned we will learn about rainforest ecosystem, and then we're also going to study about the reef, okay, mostly the Great Barrier Reef ecosystem, and also the outback ecosystem. In Australia, it's called the outback, but basically this is actually desert ecosystem. Okay, so anybody have question for this? Good, okay. Now, so this is just kind of summary of the PowerPoint that I sent it to you. So we're gonna discuss that PowerPoint in the form of summary over here. Okay? This is a short lecture about Australia landscape, biodiversity, and also conservation. Now, so when the Earth formed, that's actually billions years ago, okay, it actually forms a big mass of land. And this is just kind of history of our Earth, and then history of some continents, how the continents actually form. Okay, and then you know, on the first formations, our Earth is actually just a big mass of land with water around it. Okay, so this big mass of land is called the Pangaea. Okay, Pangaea means that big mass of land. So if you see here, it means that, you know, the organism that evolved during this time, they have the ability to connect one another, have, you know, relationship, because they have one big land. Okay, so this is during the Permian period in the geological time scale. It's about 225 million years ago. And then it starts to break down. And that breakdown process is called the continental drift. So basically, our Earth, the plate of the Earth, the soil is actually moving. It's moving. Right now, it's still moving, but it's very slow. Okay, so you can imagine from 225 million years ago to 200 million years ago is about 25 millions or maybe 50 millions. Is broken down like this. It's a million year. So it's broken down into two big mass of land. The top one is called the Laurasia, which is become Europe and part of the northern Asia continent. And the southern part or the bottom part of that land is called the Gondwana. So the Gondwana is actually a big mass of land on the southern part of the earth. Now it's split again with the continental drift. It's separated into many smaller land. That smaller land now is called as a continent. If you see over here, look at here. So this is actually become the African continent, and this is South American continent. You can see this one is really fit, right? The land is actually fit. It's separated little by little. It's drifting little by little. And finally, if you see at the end, which is the one that we have right now, the South America is farther away from Africa. But if you look at the shape, the shape of the South Africa, the South America and Africa over here, they actually used to be fit. So this is one of the evidence that this continent used to be one big mass of land. So Africa, South America, Antarctica, Australia, and part of Asia like India, China, is actually part of this Gondwana. The other part of Asia, like Russia right now, and then Europe and also North America is actually part of Laurasia. Okay, so over here it's actually used to be Laurasia, this part, and this part at the bottom it used to be Gondwana. Now, another evidence of this is the organisms, the species that live in North far, like North America, Europe, North Asia, South America, Africa, and Australia, over here, Indonesia, for example. They are actually really different. So the Gondwana, many Gondwana species, they are similar, like in Africa and Asia, Southern Asia, they are very similar. We have elephant, for example. In South America, they have jaguar. In Africa, they have a leopard, for example. They are kind of the same ancestor. Okay, but you not see them in North America. You don't see them in Europe and North America. So this is kind of evidence that this land used to be one land, and the ancestor of species, used to be the same ancestor, but they are evolved into now many different species. Another things, when I visited Costa Rica, there are a lot of parrots over there, right? A lot of parrots. And then in Austria, in Indonesia, we also have a lot of parrots. This is showing that parrot ancestor might be coming from the same land, which is coming from the Gondwana. This is some evidence of that continental drift that causing the continent into separate. It used to be one land, now it's separate into many continents. You might also see later in Australia and Indonesia part, especially the eastern part of Indonesia, they have a very similar type of organism, while on the western part of Indonesia are really similar with India, Cambodia, Thailand, with Asian continent. Indonesia is a country with about 17,000 islands. So they have a lot of islands. And in the western part of Indonesia, the islands on the western part, they have very similar animals with the Thailand, India, while on the eastern part, islands of Indonesia, they have a very similar animal with Australia. This is also showing us with that separation is actually the eastern part of Indonesia used to be one land with Australia. The western part used to be one or similar lands with the Asia. So they have the same ancestor of species of organism. Now, if we continue here, so we focus in Australia over here, okay? So before it's further developed or separated like this, again, I mentioned before, the eastern part of Indonesian island over here, this is Papua, and the northern part of Australia used to be one land. It means that many ancestors of species in this area, they are similar. So we'll find some similarity of species between Papua and Australia. Okay, so that's another evidence of this continental drift. Now, if you look Australia, so let's say this is actually the Australia right now. Is look like this, right? Australia is kind of the only continent that do not have the volcano. So they have some higher highlands area, but it's not really volcano. So on the middle part over here, mostly flat land. So mostly flat land without high mountain and no volcano. So one of the benefit of having volcanoes is having the fertile soil or lands. Like Indonesia, for example, Indonesia have a lot of volcanoes. Okay, it is part of what we call the ring of fire. Okay, so from Himalaya going down to Malaysia, Indonesia, and up to western part of America, like in San Francisco, California, yeah, they have also rings of part of the rings of fire, which is volcano. And this is a very fertile lands. While if you see Australia, they don't have that one. This is flat. So what does that mean? Australia do not have fertile soil. Also, because there is no high ground, it means that the rain cloud will not be formed or rarely form on this place. Does that mean that Australia will get less rain compared to the place that have higher ground, that have a lot of mountain? Because mountain is actually able to collect the cloud into rainy cloud and then causing the rains after that. Okay, so this is kind of the background information why Australia is really hot, desert, no water or less water because of this land condition, because of the landscape. It's really flat, no high mountains, no volcano. Okay, so mostly going to be desert biomes or ecosystem, very dry. Okay, so that's the Australia situation. So 70% of Australian land is actually called the outback. So outback is actually the same as a desert ecosystem. Okay, only on the eastern north part, so northeastern part of Australia, they have a green belt over there. So they have the rainforest, they have temperate forest, and they have some maybe woodland and shrub. Okay? So, but majority of Australia will be desert with grasses, savanna, and maybe some shrub lands in this middle part. Therefore, if we learn about the organism or the species that live in Australia later, it will be the one that adapted to this situation, to this environmental condition, to this ecosystem. Okay, so after a million year or 1,000 years live in Australia, okay, we will find right now that many Australia organism or species is actually endemic, only found in Australia, not on the other continent because of this unique landscape and situation or condition in Australia. Okay, so landscape of the Australia can be divided into 4 types. As I mentioned before, the middle one mostly gonna be called the central lowlands. This is gonna be very flat and low area, and no volcanic activity to bring the nutrients to the surface. Therefore, the soil is really poor. Therefore, there will be no big or large plants will be growing in this place. Okay? It's going to be dominated by desert ecosystem called the outback ecosystem. And then on the eastern part, especially northeastern part, they have some highland. Therefore, there will be some cloud rain in this area. There's going to be rain. Therefore, this area will be greener compared to the other part of the Australia. This is actually the place that mostly will be staying and observing, which is in the city called Cairn. I don't know how to say it. Cairn, Cairn. So this is actually in the eastern highland part of Australia, where we will find the forest over there, the tropical rainforest in this area. And then the western part is a little bit higher, but it's still flat. It's called the Western Plateau. So the ecosystem is going to be the same like the central lowlands over here. It's going to be hot, poor soil. It's going to be kind of desert, maybe shrub lands in this area. And then, of course, the coastal area, coastal plains. This is a narrow strip of lands along the coast. Particularly in the eastern coast, we will also see some plants, some green area with the estuaries, delta. And delta actually carry a lot of nutrients, causing this area become fertile. So it's going to be having many plants and trees that will also growing in this delta of the coastal plains in Australia. Now, this ecosystem can be divided into also 4 types. The first one, the majority or the dominant ecosystem in the Australia, it's called the outback ecosystem. So this is actually desert biomes or ecosystem, very dry, with very little rain or even sometimes no rain for years. And then forest ecosystem, this is again mostly on the northeastern part of the Australia. Wetlands, there are some wetland ecosystems in Australia, maybe small lake, small river, again, mostly also in the eastern part of Australia. The outback in the middle, maybe sometimes there is a creek, small creek during the rainy season. There's rain, but sometimes on the dry seasons, that river or that creek will be dry. And then, of course, marine ecosystem. We will also study the marine ecosystem in Australia. We will be snorkeling in the Great Barrier Reef. We also will visit some beach, whether rocky beach, coral, or maybe sandy beach. We will visit this different type of marine ecosystem. For the outback ecosystem, again, mostly sandy and stony desert. This is just a desert habitats. If you have visited Arizona, for example, it's very similar with that condition. So very small plants or tree that live over there. Mostly the tree or the plants that live there will be the one that able to conserve water, like cactus, for example. Then part of that outback, maybe there is a dry grasslands, And then shrubland, this is a higher compared to the grassland. This is mostly also a woody plant, but a very small plant. Low woodland is also woodlands. This is a small trees. And then outback wetland. I mentioned before, sometimes the wetland is dry during the dry season and it become wet when there is rain. For the forest ecosystem, then the northern eastern part, mostly dominated by eucalyptus forest and the woodland. And just for information, the biggest tree in the Australia is actually a type of eucalyptus tree. So we might see a lot of big eucalyptus tree in during our exploration there. And then the rainforest, okay, including tropical and maybe temperate or subtropical rain forest. Riparian forest. Riparian means the forest that actually goes along with the river. So because the river carry water and then the bank of the river, sometimes it has better soil. So maybe forest is actually go along that river. Therefore, it's called the riparian forest, go along with the river bank. And the heat is dominated by lower type of tree, maybe shrubby vegetations that resistance against dry or drought. And then for the wetland ecosystem, this wetland, we might visit, like for example, area that have so there are several types of wetland actually, okay, like a swamp, okay, marshes, and bogs. We already mentioned about that, okay. So there are some wetland area that will have some trees on it, and then they also have a lake and swamp, and some permanent rivers and creek, and seasonal creeks. So we might visit them, especially when we visit maybe mangrove, we might, go along the creeks before it is entering into the mangrove area. For the marine ecosystem, mangrove is going to be dominated by the plant, very specific plants that actually adapted to the salty water, and they also have the ability to produce the seed that able to actually growing under the water or inside the mud, okay, during the flood water. We will visit sandy beaches, okay, and then rocky headlands. So for the rocky headlands, this is really rocky beaches actually. So you might need a special shoes for this one, because you cannot really use the flip-flop, for example, because it's going to be a lot of a little bit sharp, rocky rock in that beach. And then coral reef, we also visit this ecosystem. Seagrass bed, this is mostly underwater. This is where we might find a lot of microscopic algae, like kelp, for example. Okay, some red algae. Okay, so kelp is in pyophyta, means brown algae. We're gonna try to find them also. Okay, so identify some of different of algae that live in this seagrass beds. And then littoral and intertidal zone. This is, I mentioned before, this is the place where we will be able to see a lot of echinodermata. Echinodermata mean animal that have a rough skin. So it has like a spiny skin or a little bit rough skin, like sea star, sea urchins, sea cucumber. This is mostly they live in this littoral or intertidal zone. and then open and deep sea habitat. We will not be able to maybe go this place, but when we snorkeling, we might kind of, observe this a little bit, but it's not really open water out from the beach. Okay, so now biodiversity of Australia. For this one, Australia have special terminology. Like for example, of course, species terminology is going to be the same, which is a group of organisms that can interbreed and produce viable, fertile offspring. So this is what we call the species. When they're able to interbreed, then produce the viable offspring, they are one species. Okay? Like horse, for example, with horse, they are one species. But horse and donkey, they are different species. But, sometimes they're able to interbreed, they produce a mix, okay? It's called the mule. But the mule mostly not fertile. So they are sterile. So they are very similar, maybe. Okay, mule, I mean the horse and donkey, kind of similar, but they are separate species because they cannot produce the fertile offspring. Uh, there are many birds that very similar. They also unable to interbreed and produce fertile offspring. So they are different species. Native or indigenous species, this is species that the ancestor actually came here or evolved here without any human intervention. So when we call about native or indigenous species, it means that the ancestor actually evolved in that place without human intervention. The endemic species is similar with the indigenous species, which is the species that only found in that place, in that area. So maybe the ancestor is evolved on that area too. So they become endemic. There, most of the specialists, mostly they are endemic species. And then introduced species mean the species that's introduced by humans, is brought by human. So that introduced species. And then exotic is actually opposite of native or indigenous. It means that the species is actually their ancestor is actually introduced and carried by human. It is not native species. So example, maybe right now in Australia, we have dingo. They are become, developed there, but they are still not really endemic species. They are actually still considered as exotic species because their ancestor is actually brought by human several thousand years ago. And then feral species means species that introduced, brought by human, and have successfully established themselves in the wild, including here is the dingo again. So dingoes, they are become feral species. Maybe some other species like rabbit that use introduced by human. Sometimes they carry it for hunting, as an object of hunting. Now it's become spreadings in Australia. So this is also considered as a feral species. Now, if the feral species become dangerous or actually causing disturbances to the ecosystem, endanger the native species, okay, that feral species or the exotic species now called as invasive species. So invasive species is very similar with exotic and feral species, which is also brought by human uh, and causing endanger to local species. There are also some invasive species that is brought incidentally. It's not really brought by human, but maybe when human coming with the big ship, that species actually, maybe attached to the ship and then spread on the new environment. They have become invasive species too. Okay, now mammals. So again, if you want to choose your species for your writing, the final rating, you can choose any species, but you can also choose, if you want to write about ecosystem, you can also choose ecosystem that you want to write. Maybe you want to write outback ecosystem, or you want to write about Great Barrier Reef ecosystem, because we're going to visit them. But if you want to choose specific organism, yeah, like for example, I want to write about koala, that's okay too. So for your final writing, you actually can choose, but I will give you uh, the the procedure or the instructions, what is needed for that final writing. Okay, so mammals of Australia, there are, of course, mammal, there are three types. Okay, we have the most primitive one is monotremes. It's also known as proto theria. So proto mean before or primitive, theria mean placenta. So they don't really have placenta actually, because these monotremata, monotremes, they lay eggs. So they lay eggs. So they are called the proto theria. We can also use the monotremes terminology. Okay, and then there are second one. Okay, a little bit higher development is what we call the metatheria. Another name is marsupials. So they're actually giving birth, but the baby that they give birth is really, really tiny. It's not fully developed yet. Therefore, they have to carry this baby with them. So the baby actually growing up outside the uterus is growing up inside the pouch of the mother, the belly pouch. And the modern one is called the eutheria. Eu mean real, theria mean placenta. So this one also called as a placenta mammalia. Okay, so this is the three type of mammalia. In Australia, this is very unique. If in any other continents, mostly the one that are dominant are placenta mammalia. But in Australia, marsupial is actually the most dominant mammalia. So these marsupials animals, it may be about 50% of mammals species in Australia is marsupial. The rest is going to be placenta, and there are also monotreme. Monotreme is really few. Only two types is actually that live now. So again, this is the three type of mammals that live in Australia. Marsupials can be divided into four types, okay, based on their niche or their functions. The first one is herbivorous marsupials. This is the one that eat producer or eat plants. This is the most dominant marsupial in Australia, include the kangaroo, wallabies, red kangaroo, wombat, koalas, possum. Possum actually, some of them is omnivore. Cuscus. In Indonesia, we have also cuscus in Papua. It's a big ice. They only go at night. And then some gliders, marsupials. And then carnivorous or insectivorous marsupial, this is the one that eat animal or mostly insect and small mammals, including Tasmanian devils, quolls, phascolates, coaris, dunnet, antechinus, and numbats. We're gonna if we're able to observe them, I believe we should be able to see numbats maybe in the wild reserve area. Okay, And then omnivorous marsupial, this is the one that eat both plants and animals or insects, including bandicoots and bilbies. And then mold, this is only present during the night. It's really difficult to find these marsupials, just like moles also in our place, in our area. Just for information, and just a couple months ago, one of my students did a research in Appalachian forest. He able to catch some moles from the trap that he put on the Appalachian forest. So moles in Australia is going to be really difficult to maybe see them. And we cannot trap them because our study is not for trapping animal. We just observing. If we trap them, maybe we will be able to catch them, but we will not be allowed to perform this type of research or experiments. Placentals of Australia, the most dominant one, of course, the most noticeable one is the dingo. So this is placenta mammalia, just like us, we have a placenta. Human is including in the placenta mammalia. Then some rodents, many different types of rats and mice in Australia. And then bats, there are megabats and microbats. Megabats, mostly they eat fruit. So this is a fruit bat. Microbats, mostly they eat insects. So that's the difference. Megabats mostly live on the trees. Microbats, mostly they live in the cave or maybe in the holes of the trees. So they live in the darker place compared to the megabats. And then aquatic mammals, maybe seal and sea lions. I'm not sure whether we will be able to visit or see them, observe them or not. Whale and dolphin, dugong or manatee. This is also mammals or aquatic mammalia. Manatee or dugong mostly in the kind of freshwater area. And of course, we will also find feral placental mammals. This is mostly introduced mammals, including the livestock like goat, buffalo, camel, and pigs. This is also mammalia, but they are mostly introduced or exotic species. Now, for the monotremes or prototheria, they lay eggs. So it's kind of weird that mammals laying eggs, but it is actually. There are two types of monotreme platypus. If you watch the Phineas and Ferb, okay, so they have periplatypus, right? That's how the platypus look like. So they have bill, they have bill instead of mouth. It's really from this actually is kind of evidence there is evolutions from bird to mammals. So platypus or the monotreme is considered as the most primitive type of mammals. So they still lay eggs. They still have bills instead of mouth. So platypus, they look like what you call the duck. So they have bills, but they also have big tails. Okay. And echidna, this is only present in Australia. This is similar for the porcupine or the hedgehog, the animal that have spiny, very spiny, thorny kind of structure. But instead of having proboscis, so this porcupine is actually, they have what we call the proboscis, a long mouth that able to find the insect. The echidna actually have bills. rubbery bill, just like a duck, but it's a rubbery bill. It is not proboscis, but it is bill, just like the platypus, but a little bit smaller. Now, the birds of Australia, and Australia known as the place with birds that do not flight or flightless bird, like cassowaries, emu, and kiwi. So they're unable to fly. This is actually showing us the evolution of this bird, because they used to be, okay, they live in the area that don't have the big predators, before the dingo coming. This bird is evolved. This is the one that will be evolved in Australia. So they don't have the enemy, they don't have the predator that eat them. Therefore, they can live on land without the ability to fly. So this is flightless bird like cassowaries, emu, and kiwi. Kiwi is a little bit smaller compared to the cassowaries and emu. I mentioned before parrots. There are a lot of parrots in South America. There are a lot of parrots in Indonesia, a lot of parrots in part of the Asia, and of course Australia. It is actually kind of evident that parrots' ancestor might be evolved in the Gondwana supercontinents. Reptiles, so going to be snake, lizard, turtles, and crocodile. And maybe you have heard that a lot of dangerous snake in Australia. So we will not really try to observe these reptiles in Australia. So it's not our focus for this study. We might learn some, but it's not really our goal to really study snake in Australia. Lizard, there are different type of lizard that also live in Australia. Turtles, okay, include freshwater and marine turtles. Crocodile, and also Australia known as the place with the dangerous saltwater crocodile. If you still remember, what's it, Steve Irwin, the crocodile man, they used to play with the crocodile. So Australia known as the place with the big saltwater crocodile. Also, Australia have the local or endemic freshwater crocodile. It's called the Johnstones. This is smaller, and they are shyer. They are shyer compared to the saltwater crocodile. Maybe in saltwater crocodile they will attack, but Johnstone or the freshwater crocodile, they usually run away when seeing human. Okay, so it's different kind of characteristic between these two type of crocodiles. Amphibian of Australia, we might find frogs and also toads in Australia. But again, this is not really our goal or focus to study this frog and toad. But if we find them, we can also documenting them and then try to know their name or their type. Fish, there are several types. First one, of course, the most primitive one, the fish without jaw or jawless fish. It's difficult to find this type of fish. They're mostly hiding under the water, under the coral. And then cartilaginous fish, this is include the rays and shark. So they don't really have bone, but they have cartilage. And then bony fish, this is the most abundant type of fish. Of course, we will observe them during our snorkeling, maybe. So you can find them, you can try to identify them. Okay, you might see Dory, okay, Nemo, okay, the clownfish. So you'll be able to see different type of bony fish in this great real barrier reef during our snorkeling. I'm not sure whether our guys in snorkeling will have the underwater camera or not. I hope they will have it. So it's gonna be good for us. They will be able to capture us under the water and also capture the fish, okay, the coral reef under the water. In Indonesia, we have also have this kind of snorkeling, but they have uh, the surface that takes our picture under the water. I'm not sure about this surface in our study abroad here in Australia. I hope they will have that also underwater camera. Okay, so invertebrates in Australia, again, this is just for your information. We will not really study insects, arachnids, myriapods. Insects mean hexapod. This is the one that has 6 legs. So like crickets, for example, bugs, roaches, termites, that's insects. Ants, they are insects. Arachnids include the spider. Myriapod, this is the one that have many legs, maybe millipede and centipedes. Centipede is bigger, millipede smaller. Centipede is dangerous. They might poisonous, but millipede mostly is not dangerous. Crustacean, this include crab, cray, shrimp, barnacles. Again, we will not focus on them. We might be able to see some barnacles maybe or crabs during our visit on the marine ecosystem. Echinoderms, we will study some of them, so we'll try to count them, okay, their population abundance on the littoral zones or intertidal zones. So we're gonna try to measure it, just kind of a study a little bit about their population. We're gonna see which one is actually most abundance on the intertidal zones, whether the sea urchins or maybe sea stars or maybe Bristol stars or maybe other. So we try to, we try to study a little bit about these echinoderms animals. Mollusks, we will not really study them. So this is including the snails like oyster, mussel, clams, octopus, squid. That's including the mollusks. And then worms, we will not study them also. Jellyfish, anemones, coral, maybe we will see a lot of anemones during our snorkeling. Sponges, maybe some of them. Okay, so they maybe have a green kind of yellowish color. When we snorkeling, we might also be able to see some sponges, but not SpongeBob. Okay, just sponges. Jellyfish, we try to avoid this. We try to avoid jellyfish because they are poisonous. If you are allergic, if you have that sensitivity, it might cause a problem. So we will try to avoid jellyfish. Now, conservations. This is just estimating of diversity of organism in the world. So based on their study, it is said that maybe there are around 5 to 10 million different species of organism on the world. Okay, so it's a big standard deviation from 5 to 10. There are 5 million different because what? Because there are so many organisms or species that actually is not found yet or is not identified yet. So scientists kind of realize there are still so many organisms or species that we not able to identify yet. Maybe mostly they live in the area that really difficult for human to reach that place, or maybe they are very small, like maybe some bacteria or protists or fungi. They are small and they live in specific area or place that also difficult to reach. So about that, many type of species. So that's the diversity. So diversity actually can be divided into 3 types. genetic, species, and ecological diversity. We will not study the genetics diversity because this is about DNA, about genes. So everyone actually have diversity on their DNA. No one, no two-person have the same gene. So that's got kind of diversity. And then species diversity, this is the one that we will study in Australia, and also ecosystem or ecological diversity, different type of ecosystem, maybe outback, wetlands, marines, type of ecosystem. That's ecological diversity. So in order to make sure that species is there or they able to live in their ecosystem, then we have to really protect them. We'll protect the animal, protect the organism. At the same time, we also have to protect their place, their ecosystem. Okay, so this is actually the goals of bioconservation, which is conserve the ecosystem. At the same time, it will conserve the species, and of course, it will conserve the gene pools, the genetics. Example of bioconservation is like establishing protected area like a national park, wildlife sanctuary, implementing sustainable resource management practice. We still be able to take benefit of our natural resources, but at the same time, we have to protect them. We have to regrow back, for example, if we maybe cut the plants. And then restoring the degraded ecosystem. If there is a pollution, there is a place that is already bad, we might have the effort to restore this place into the place that is suitable for organism to live again. So this is kind of the goal or examples of action in bioconservation. Mainly, there are two types of bioconservation. The first one is called the in situ. In situ means the conservations in their habitat, in their natural habitats. Example of in situ conservation is national park. So national park is excellent example of in situ conservation, where the government actually protect the ecosystem, the habitat, and then it will conserve, it will protect the organism that live on that habitat. So this is what we call the in situ conservation. The second one is called the ex situ. Ex situ means outside conservation. It means that this is conservation effort that is done outside their natural place. Example is the zoo, for example. Zoo is actually a type of conservation effort too. So many zoo is actually able to regrow back some of the animals. Maybe elephants, maybe rhino, or maybe some type of other animals that they're able to breed them in the zoo. So this is also type of conservation, but it is outside their natural habitat. Therefore, it's called the ex situ or ex situ conservation. This is just examples of protected area like national park, wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserve. This is many of this is type of in situ conservation. This is some effort to sustain, so it's called a sustainable resource management. Sometimes it is known as sustainable development. Like, for example, preventing over harvesting. So it is okay to hunt, hunting, for example, but it's not too much, not too many. So there is a regulation for cattle grazing, for example, or for hunting, for fishing. In many developed country like Europe, America, for example, they have this. They have this over harvesting regulation or rule. But many developing countries, third world country, they don't have this one. So many people is kind of, they just do whatever they want to do. They're hunting, they're fishing, they take all type of fish, including the small one. So this is a prevention that sometimes it is not present in some third world countries. And that's the reason why many organisms, many species in the third world countries, they are become extinct because of they don't have the ability to protect them. Okay, sustainable forestry, and then pollution reduction. This is some of example of sustainable resource management or sustainable development. This is restoration ecology, like when the habitats become destroyed or bad, then government or maybe some non-government organizations able to perform this action, like habitat restoration, species reintroduction, and then restoring water quality. This is kind of restorations ecology activity to protect the environment or conserve the habitat. Other examples like conservation education and awareness. This is good for education for kids, for example. They must learn how to conserve, how to love animals, plants, habitats. And then zoos and aquarium. This is another example of conservation. Or seed banks. There are many country, they actually have the seed bank. Seed bank mostly considered as a genetic conservation too, because when they preserve or conserve the seed, they also preserve and conserve the genes, the genetics information in it. There are some special technology that we also will learn in this class, like a keystone species. This is a species that with their elimination will have the big effect on that ecosystem. Maybe in Australia, example of keystone species is eucalyptus tree. So if the eucalyptus tree species extinct, then that ecosystem will be destroyed. Koala will not have place to live, for example. Okay. Indicator species, this is species that used to know or to identify specific conditions on that environment. There are many indicator species, like for example, when we study about pollution, there are some organisms that actually really tolerant with the pollution. So that's a type of indicator species. And there are some species that are actually really sensitive with the pollution. So the one that's sensitive mostly will not be found in the polluted area. But some resistant species will be able to find on this polluted area. So this is indicator for pollution, for example. Okay. Umbrella species, this is a species that requires a big range of habitats. Right? So example maybe in Australia, like kangaroo. Kangaroo, they require a big block of habitat. They cannot live in small place because their home range is huge. Okay, they can move from one place to another place, so they require a wider or bigger habitat. And this species called as a umbrella species. Elephant, for example, and that's another type of umbrella species. Flagship species, this is a species that people found it as very interesting and attractive, and that it will cause them to, to conserve them. In example, in Australia, maybe is koala. koala, people think koala is really cute and they want to protect, they want to conserve this koala. This is a example of flagship species. Another example of flagship species may be like panda, for example. Panda is many people, kind of, amused with the uh, panda, so they like panda. So that's another example of flagship species. Now, what is the biggest threat of biodiversity? Of course, biodiversity is number of species, right? The biggest threat will be extinction, which is elimination of species itself. So this is the biggest threat. And this can be caused by natural or anthropogenic. Anthropogenic means human impact. So the extinction of species can be caused maybe natural or by human or anthropogenic activities. So for the human impact or human or anthropogenic threat is actually divided into 5 types, or they make abbreviations HIPPO. The first one, the biggest threat from human activity is actually habitat destruction. This is almost everywhere, including in Australia, because there are many lands that actually change into maybe farming area, or maybe habitats for humans, cities, and etc. So this is the highest human threat for extinction or for the biodiversity. The second one, we already mentioned about invasive species. This is type of exotic species that compete with the local or endemic species. Okay, so this will make the local or endemic species to be extinct. Pollution, this is another threat from human activity. And then the other P is increase of population growth. So increase human population. So this population is actually talking about human population. Increase human population will also becoming threat of species extinction or biodiversity. And the last one is over harvesting, including overfishing, overgrazing, overhunting. So this is also human threats for the biodiversity. For species that extinct or close to extinct, they actually have a special terminology. The first one, this is the lowest status, is called the vulnerable species. They are naturally present there, but they are in the risk of being threatened. So there are still maybe enough number of species, but human activity might cause them to be the second level, increase to the second level called the threatened species. This is the one that most likely become endangered. So then their population number will become lower of human activity. And then if they continue like that, they become on the highest risk, is called the endangered species. So when we heard about endangered species, it means that this species is really, really rare, and they are in the risk of extinction if we do not try to conserve them, or we do not try to help them. So endangered species, they will gone with the human activity, with the human threat, if we do not do activities that save their life. Okay, so this is the highest risk of extinction for species, called the endangered species. This is just showing us the most endangered species, actually amphibian. So amphibian extinction is in the highest rate. And then mammal, number 2, bird, reptile, plant, and fish. So these are just showing us the fastest kind of extinction rates for amphibian. Many amphibian actually really sensitive with the change of the environment, so they become extinct very easily. Okay? They are very sensitive. Mammal is number two. So that's just showing us the graph or graphic different group of extinction of different organisms. Okay, so this is just showing us the examples when we protect the ecosystem, when we give them the place to live, the bigger the place, the better for them. Right? So the size is actually matter. Okay, the bigger the preservation area is going to be better for animals or plants to thrive, to develop or to grow. So it will conserve more. This is just example of national park. So in many national park, they actually allow people to come, but they have what we call the core area. The core area is the place that not everyone can enter it. Maybe some researcher can enter this area, but it is prohibited for common people. And then the second area is called the buffer zone. Most researchers will be able to perform experiments, and also ecotourism will be allowed in this buffer zone, but they cannot enter into the core zone. And then multiple use area, usually this is the place that can be used by common peoples to also use the national park or the preserve area. So some of them maybe do the farming or taking the branches of the tree for the firewood, for example. This is on the multiple use area. So this is kind of how this national park can be arranged or can be organized into different zones in order to conserve the organism or species. This is another one for conservation, which is education, is starting from very beginning age to understand about ecosystem, the function of ecosystem, what happens if the ecosystem is not protected. Okay, what can people do or community do in order to conserve ecosystem. So this is educational awareness for conserving ecosystem and species. Okay, so we already have this one. So again, this is Australia biodiversity and also biomes. Mostly Australia, again, is outback, some savanna, grassland, and some forests. So we're going to visit most of these places. We're going to try to visit all of them, including marine ecosystem. We will also try to learn ecosystem on that in our study abroad. Okay, I think that's all for this lecture. Anybody have question? I will stop sharing. Okay, I just see this. Okay, from Daisy. Okay. Okay, I will call you name one by one just for, kind of attendance, and also maybe asking you if you have questions for this lecture. So Emma, are you still there?
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. How about Morgan?
I don't have any questions. Excited for the trip.
Okay, wonderful. We will have fun. We will have fun. Okay, I promise. Miranda,
I'm all good, thank you.
thank you. Okay, Jenna,
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
no question. You're welcome. Addison,
No questions. Thank you.
you're welcome. Daisy, can you hear me?
Yeah, I have no questions. Just excited.
Okay, okay, wonderful. Who else here? Jack, can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay, okay. So, just a reminder, okay, for your pre-departure assignments will be due tomorrow, right? Three of you already submitted, okay, but the rest of you have not yet. So, if you can submit tomorrow, that's good. That's the due date for that pre-assignment because I need it and I have to print it out and I have to grade it. And after I grade it, I will give it to you, whether in airport or in Australia, because some of you will not depart from Cincinnati. So if you can, submit your assignment, please do so by tomorrow. Okay.
Thank
And then
you.
also, yeah, also prepare with your, stuff for traveling.